So we're back. So what I'm going to do today, as you would have seen in the title, um, essentially start a bit of a refreshing the chassis a little bit. Now, I know I said in the very first video, if you did see it, that I was taking this airlift install as kind of an opportunity to refresh. I had said some of the stuff in the car, but not everything. But I've decided to go down the rabbit hole, so here we are. So I've decided that there's a lot of stuff that's in the car that's potentially the original, potentially 30 years old, potentially the OE stuff that isn't really bad, but isn't brilliant either. So, and a lot of the stuff is just it's so cheap that I figure when I've one part stripped out, I may as well do the next thing, and may as well do the thing behind that, and so on. And as I said, go down the rabbit hole. So, with that in mind, I had ordered the rear shock bushings. It's kind of hard to tell there now because we're in the shadow. Those are the new ones pushed in. The original ones, are the ones that were in there, were absolutely knackered. They were falling apart. Oh, you can see it a lot better there now. So got those in. It was a bit of a task, to be honest. The old ones came up pretty handy, but just, I don't have a press or anything like that, so I was just doing it kind of with the vise and sockets and things like that. But they got done at least anyway. That was probably the biggest, I suppose, challenge. And along with that, I had ordered, that's my shelf of new parts and stuff. I have one side of the control arms done. As I mentioned before, that's the new one right there. And you can see the other one in behind it right there. So that side is done and assembled back together. I have the normal shock and spring back in it for the time being because it needs to go down for rust repair pretty soon, and I didn't want to leave the air stuff in it just in case something went wrong or whatever and it couldn't be moved or whatever. So that side has the new front and back, I guess you'd call it, lower control arms, and it has a new bushing. Well, you won't see it there, but it's, can you see it? Nah, doesn't matter. So that's that side complete and ready to at least roll again. But in the meantime, I have the other side to do, which is, that's one of the original ones, which, as you can, I mean, like, look at that. In fairness to it, it doesn't actually move around or have much play in it at all, but just it's crusty and it's shitty anyway. That one, it's not as bad, but again, you know, crusty looking and shitty. And the four of those control arms, there's a pair there for the driver's side. The four of them shipped from America. I think it was like €2, under €200 or something like that. It was very cheap. So as I said earlier, the fact just that they were cheap, it made sense to do them. Now, other things that I was gonna do on the rear was, you can kind of see it there. The wheel cylinders for the brake shoe or the drum setup, the cylinders are kind of leaky, and they're definitely leaky on that side that I just showed you. They're not too bad on the other side. And of course I could throw them in and I could do brake shoes and stuff like that, but I'm not going to bother doing that, to be honest, because I have two more. I suppose I have two more, you could say, of these cars that they're a couple of hours away, and with the restrictions and stuff like that, I can't get to them or get them delivered or anything like that. And one of them has discs on the back. Excuse me. So the plan is to eventually swap out and have discs on the back. So the only thing I might have to redo is if I get that car with the disc brakes and the shock bushing is knackered, just to put in a new shock bushing. But again, they were like, my father works for a parts company, he was able to get them. They were less than €5 each for the two shock bushings, so it's not a big deal. And now that I've done it once and kind of fought with it, I know the handy way to do it next time. So that's kind of all that the rear will be done for now. I'm not going to bother with the brake shoes or wheel cylinders or anything like that. So the plan for today is to get that corner, that hub that I just showed you, back into the car. I need to make a new little brake pipe. There's about 4 or 5 inches worth of a brake pipe that was leaking a little bit too. Just there was a split at the very end. Probably would have been okay, but I have a roll of copper pipe and I have a flaring tool and stuff like that. So while it's off the car, straightforward enough to make one. Get that back in. The only thing that'll be a challenge with that side is the handbrake cable kind of runs up and above and around the the heat shield for the exhaust. So what I've done, I put as silly as it sounds, I'll actually show you. I got some rope, or like, well, it looks like string, but it's actually reasonably strong, I suppose thin rope you'd call it, and I tied it to, say, that's the other side, I tied it to that and let it run down through the body and up around the heat shield and stuff like that, so at least when I'm putting it back in, I can get under the car and kind of work it through as much as I need to, and then I'll get someone else in here to kind of help pull it through, and that'll in theory help it, or at least make it a bit easier to get back up through the car. So once that stuff was done, I'm still waiting on some other parts, but along with refreshing the back, there's no point doing the back and not doing anything on the front. So with that in mind, I ordered a whole bunch of stuff really. I knew the car needed brake discs because, again, just out of lack of use, they probably would be okay with a bit of driving and clean up and stuff, but again, I doubt they're the originals, but who knows. But the only pain with those is that, as you can kind of tell, they're not like your standard brake discs. They're what they call a captive setup. So what happens is, it's kind of hard to show you now at one hand, but the bearing and the hub, now obviously it's not threaded up, but the disc bolts onto the hub there, those four, and then it's kind of awkward to show you now at one hand, but the bearing itself sits through the disc, and then the bearing presses into the, actually I have it there, the bearing itself is bolted and kind of just a not press fit, but is bolted into the hub there. You can see there's the bottom ball joint and the tie rod where it picks up, just to give you a reference of where that sits. So it's quite a job. Like, you have to take a lot of shit apart just to do discs on it if you wanted, but I was definitely going to do discs. I found those quite cheap, local, surprisingly enough. They weren't even 50 euros. These are okay, the hubs and bearings. Like, there's no play in them and stuff when you have it on, when you have the wheel on the car, and you know, they're not noisy anything like that, but they're a little bit, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but they sound kind of like gritty, I suppose you'd call it. So I just had a look online, and the bearing itself, just the bearing, was like 80 quid or 100 quid maybe, and you would have to essentially smash that piece there is the hub, and then the rest is the bearing, obviously. So you have to kind of either press it out or cut it out or whatever. It's a lot of work. So then I decided that I'd have a look online, and that entire setup, hub and bearing, was available on eBay, again from America, but the whole thing, that whole setup, so it saves me buying a new bearing, saves me getting things pressed in and pressed off or whatever. I think it was like 120 euros shipped, so they should be here today, being Friday. I'd like to think they would have been here today, but it's looking like it's going to be next week. But it will save a lot of hassle, not only for putting it all back together, but I'll have obviously a new bearing and a new hub as well, because I had planned on doing bearings eventually anyway. It's not this one, I mean hubs anyway, because at some point I assume someone cross-threaded that down the line anywhere in the last 30 odd years. So between the spacer that I have to run to clear the caliper on the front and the wheel itself, that gets maybe 2 or 3 threads. Like, it feels pretty sketchy now. 1 out of 4 I suppose is not a big deal, but anyway, a new hub and everything will fix that problem. And also on, I think it was on this bearing, the 4 bolts that you have to take out to get it out of the hub, what they recommend you do once you get these out, they say you get a bolt with a similar enough thread, which I just happen to have 2 old bolts that were the same thread, and you thread them down into that. You can see, probably tell what I'm going to tell you because this is already crooked, and essentially whack that with a hammer, you know, just going on each corner, and eventually it'll kind of push it out. So, but what happened in one of them, I don't know, did I just go too hard on it or what, but the threads in, I think it's this one, are kind of knackered about maybe a third of the way down. So again, new bearing and hub will solve those issues on that side. The new discs, and I've also, the last thing I ordered was, where's the old ones? Again, I figured while I was at it, the entire lower control arm. That bushing, absolutely fine, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Probably the original, probably 30 years old, but it's absolutely fine. That bushing, again, it's not bad, but like, well, you can see how off center it is, at least on that side. That side's not too bad. But so I got new pair of them, again very cheap from from America, so just waiting on a lot of that stuff. The front I can't really do anything with until all of that stuff arrives, but that's the plan. And then once all that stuff is done, maybe move on to the sump gasket, we'll see. Other than that, there's not. Oh yeah, one last thing for the rear. Actually, I have the adjustable camber arms which help it clear the arches on the back, but the only thing, the only thing is that the boots for the ball joints are absolutely wrecked. I haven't had those in the car for ages, and I had bought, it had failed an NCT on those, I don't know, a couple of years ago. So again, I bought OE ones, and on this one you can see yourself there, it's completely split around. I think it's just from, because I had it so low that arm ends up at such an angle that it just puts a lot of pressure around there or something, I don't know. But I don't have it to hand. I've bought like a little, what they call like a boot repair kit. It's just that piece again, and a little tool to get the kind of, I guess you'd call it a circlip. It's like a keyring clip kind of thing off. That'll need to be done as well. But for today anyway, I'm going to try and get that piece, or that whole hub, back on. Might be a bit of a pain to hold on about the cable on my own, but we'll see how it happens. Right, so that's all back together. You can see shock is in, control arm, all that kind of stuff. The new control arms, both sides all ready to rock. Brake line, new little brake line made there. It's not pretty, but it's fine. As I said, hopefully that'll all be coming out for a rear disc swap sooner rather than later anyway. That's all in, tightened up, ready to go. I got the handbrake cable through right there. You can see I just need to refit the little boots there. While I was at that, put the bit of sound deadening over that little patch. The trick with the rope, it didn't work really. The idea was to help get it up over the heat shield there. You can just see where the handbrake cable goes up over it there and over towards the right. It didn't work. It turned out just to be easier to put to pull out a few little 10 mils that held the heat shield up. I just snake it around them, tighten it all back up. It was fine. So that'll need a little bit of adjusting, and throw the wheels back on, and that's the back essentially ready to roll. So after that then, I'm still waiting. I'll be waiting on the hubs and control arms for the front. I'd say it'll be next week maybe, hopefully early next week. I'll have a few days at it then next week. Once that's done then, or once they arrive, I'll be back and we'll carry on. Good news, all the front stuff has, well, the last piece of the front suspension puzzle has arrived today. Let me show you. The hubs and bearing assembly arrived today, both sides. You can see compared to the old piece, it's not an OEM piece, but I mean it's perfect, it's absolutely fine. It solves the issue of the bad wheel nut or stud that I've shown already. I have one just quickly assembled just to show you. That explains better what I was talking about. The bearing bolts to the disc, and it that all then bolts through the hub. So it's a bit of a job to put it all back together. Well, it's not a big deal to put it back together, but it's a lot more than if I just had normal discs. Then I have the two lower control arms to go on and a new engine mount to go on. So I'll get as much of this done as I can today. Hopefully it'd be great if it was back and on its wheels rolling this evening, but we'll see what happens. They went together pretty smooth and straightforward enough. So nice shiny newness ready to go on. I'm sure there's a factory torque or something that you're supposed to do those up to, but 2 bangs of the impact there, I'm sure they'll be fine. Just, you would have seen me clean up the inside of where the bearing sits and so on, just to make sure there's nice fit and no shit stuck in the way or whatever. But yeah, ready to go back on the car. Well, there's a couple of other things to do first, but nice, as I said, nice shiny and new. So the next thing is to try and get the lower control arms onto the, well, I guess technically I should have that front part of the subframe already on the car, but there's so much tension on those, they're kind of twisted, like they're a torsion bar, I guess you want to call it, or whatever. So it's quite difficult to get those bolts in place when the control arm's already in place. So what I'm going to try and do is slide that whole thing under the car, everything is left loose, and see if I can get the bolt through the wishbone there, or like through where it sits in the chassis right there, and that might make it easier. If not, I'll just have to take it down and figure something else out, but that's the next step anyway. That all went really smoothly, thankfully. The car, to see what you can see, the subframe is back up. The my idea of putting the control arms in place and then bolting them up worked fantastic. It's way easier than any ways I've tried to do it before. The factory shocks with some Lawrence springs in it, they'll do to get it NCT'd. I'll just have to tie up the airline there out of the way, or maybe even pull it back through there and hide it behind the wing or something, just for the sake of it, but it won't be a problem. New discs and bearings. The pads that are on it, they're fine. They're actually very good. They're like 4 years old. Just the car gets so little use, there's almost no wear on them. So I might leave them in it, but if they're for the sake of like 20 quid, I might just put a new set in it, so the whole lot is new. This side back together as well, all ready to rock. It will have to come apart again, of course, once it's back from rust repair and has gotten NCT'd and so on, but all ready to go. I have the coolant system back, or the radiator I mean, back in. I was going to put a radiator in it, but just for the sake of it while it was out, but it's fine. The new engine mount, if you kind of make it out there, is in. The brakes are all blade at the back from when the whole hub was out to do those bushings. And I think that's about it for the time being, at least anyway. Again, as I said, I'm not doing anything more with that back corner or the two back corners, because hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on those cars, or that car with the rear discs on it soon. So just put everything back together reasonably loose, well, not loose like, but you know, safely, so I can drive it down to get rust repair in the coming weeks. Speaking of rust repair,